Welcome back to Pod Games, and we're doing another deck tech episode. We are reviewing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Commander deck, Turtle Power. Starting with the deck overview. So this is a commander deck. You get 100 cards out the box. 47 of them will be brand new cards, never seen before. 4 coming from the main set, 41 are reprints, and then 12 basic lands. This is a WooBird commander, so you get 1 of each mana for its color identity. New mechanics that you get in the deck is partner character select. You can have up to 2 commanders if they both have this ability. Primary game plan is to establish a board of mutants, ninjas, and turtles, and leverage token generation to trigger your commander's ability to then distribute +1/+1 counters across your entire board by generating unique tokens like mutagens, foods, and clues through various cards in the deck, which will then trigger your commander's counter placement ability once each turn. Once your creatures are sufficiently massive, you can activate the Alpha Strike to grant your entire board Menace, Trample, and Lifelink, and leverage other turtles' double damage abilities and execute a lethal combat step. The deck favours heavy combat synergies, token to counter conversion, and explosive combat steps, playing like a classic synergistic tribal style deck with massive board scaling potential. The theme of the deck is Universes Beyond, so it's all about turtles. So you're going to see your popular characters like Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, Splinter, and many more. Let's unpack the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles commander deck. So this is a WooBird commander. So let's see. Let's unpack this. Press start. Message says on the side, and then so we get this kind of pixelated card box this time. Little leaflet poster. The commander deck. Punchable tokens, and the face commander for this is Leonardo the Balanced. It's his white color identity, but gives WooBird because this is a 5-colored commander deck. All right, let's crack this open. So starting at the back, we have your play card, and then your tokens, double-sided tokens. And then going through the cards, so you've got Leonardo the Balanced, Donatello the Brains, Splinter the Mentor, Raphael the Muscle, Michelangelo the Heart, Heroes in a Half Shell. These are all the possible commanders that you can have. They've got partner character select, so you can choose to have 2 commanders if they both have this ability. So yeah, so you can customize the deck how you like. 5 different commander cards, and then starting off with the rares, you get a Continue, Endless Foot Assault, April O'Neil, Live on the Scene, Baxter, Fly in the Ointment, Here Comes a New Hero, Irma, Part-Time Mutant, Krang the All-Powerful, Ray Phillip, Wave Warrior, Bebop, Skull and Crossbones, Dimension X Pizzasaurus, Foot Chopper, Game Over, Rat King Pale Piper, Shredder Shadowmaster, Swift Demise, Casey Jones Back Alley Brute, Electric Seaweed, Fast Forward, Shell Shock, Special Move, Tempestra Dame of Games, Tokka and Raz Unsupervised, High Score, Leatherhead Iron Gator, Level Up, Ninja Pizza, Rocksteady Mutant Marauder, Super Combo, and then double-sided card is Double Jump Flying Kick, and then Arcade Cabinet, Big Mother Mauser, Coin of Mastery, Exploding Barrel, Mole Module, Roadkill Rodney, Big Apple 3 AM, Hidden Hideout, Together Forever, Vanquish the Horde, Wave Goodbye, Blasphemous Act, a Biogenic Ooze, Slash Clone, and a Steelbane Hydra. Heralds of the Shredder, which is also Vigor, Aggro Amalgam, which is also Voracious Hydra, Assassin's Trophy, Homunculus Fungus, which is also a Corpse Jack Menace, Chromatic Lantern, Cinderglade, City of Brass, a Dragon Skull Summit, Exotic Orchard, a Fabled Passage, a Grand Colosseum, Hinterland Harbour, Rain Slick Copse, Rootbound Crag, Smouldering Marsh, Sodden Verdure, Spire Garden, Sunken Hollow, Undergrowth Stadium, Veneral Fen, Little Orphan. So now we are going into the uncommons. Mona Lisa, Science Geek, A Lesson from Life, Everything Pizza, Escape Tunnel is a common, Turtle Lair, Marauding Mutagen, which is Acidic Slime, a Cultivate, Harmonize, Arcane Signet, Sol Ring, that's a cool little pizza Sol Ring, Ash Barrens, a Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Path of Ancestry, Thriving Grove, Thriving Isle, Thriving Moor, Vibrant Cityscape, and then Plains, Island, Swamp, Mountain. Yeah. So that's the deck there. All the prices and stuff will be on the screen, as well as letting you know what is a new card in the deck. Let's move over to the deck specs. Right, kicking off the specs as always, we're going to look at the average converted mana cost and salt score. So the average CMC of this deck is 3.67, which is pretty good considering the commander kind of sits at that 4 CMC level. The reason why we've got such a low CMC is because we have quite a few 2-drops. There's 18 in the deck, 16 3-drops and 12 4-drops. And then you don't have that many high-end converted mana costs. In terms of the salt score, it scores 0.16, so it's not the most irritating deck for your opponents to play against. You won't be disturbing their game plan while you're playing. So there are no infinite combos in this deck. Based on the card restriction, this deck fits a bracket 2, but the deck is thoughtfully designed and full of synergistic strong cards. Games could end out of nowhere with powerful spells and late game combos. So looking at the breakdown, so there are no game changers, there's no Mass Denial, no extra turn spells, like I said, no infinite combos and no tutors. I would say this is actually a very high level bracket 2, kind of bracket 2.5, because it plays a little bit like a bracket 3 deck, but doesn't have the cards to qualify it as an official bracket 3. Right, let's dive into the value breakdown. The total value generated from this was £58.28. Based on the current purchase price of the deck, which I bought it for about $49.99, you got a 16.5% yield to cost ratio. The new cards, you got a total value of £27.69. The most valuable new cards that came out was Continue at £2.73, Endless Foot Assault at £2.41, Part-Time Mutant was £3.75, Ninja Pizza is £2.37, and then Hidden Hideout was £1.71. Reprints, the total value was £29.43. So the most valuable reprints were Blasphemous Act, which is £1.16, Herald of the Shredder, which is a reskin of Vigor, was £1.16 as well. City of Brass, which is probably the most expensive card, was £6.93. Fabled Passage was £1.18. Spire Gardens was $3.92, and then Undergrowth Stadium is £4.19, and then you get a Sol Ring, which was £1.82. Basic lands totaled £1.16. Looking at this deck, so the value versus its original RRP, so you originally bought this deck when it was released at $69.99. You're actually only getting 83% of the value now. It doesn't always benefit to go and purchase the deck out on launch day. It might be a better waiting because you get a better value to card ratio. Right, looking at the card type distribution. So I've done something a little bit different with this deck. So I've kind of broke it down to what you actually get in the deck. So creatures, you get 31 of them. So it's a very creature heavy deck, which kind of makes sense because it's a tribal deck. 9 artifacts, 5 enchantments, 6 instances, 10 sorceries, and then 39 lands. I then also looked at a deck build template. So this is kind of like the ideal template that you want to have for your deck. For example, commanders, you're going to have 1 or 2. In this case, you can have 2. Lands, you want to have 36 to 38 lands. This one comes in at 39, so you've got kind of 1 more land than you actually need. Ramp, you want 10 to 12 pieces. The deck currently has 8, so slightly below on that mark. Card advantage, once again, you want 10 to 12 pieces. So this is all of your draw, your kind of cheating spells, those kind of things. It comes in at 9. Mass Disruption, so your board wipes or your disruptive spells to stop your opponent. You want 3 to 4. The deck actually comes with 6. And then your interaction pieces, so your spot removal, your counter spells, things like that. You want 10 to 12 pieces of those. The deck has 8. And then the remainder of your card budget, essentially, which will be 30 to 33. This is what your deck plan is. So these are the synergistic cards that you have for your deck and how it kind of plays, which there's 28 of those for this particular deck. Right, looking at the mana distribution of the deck. So yes, this is a 5-color commander deck, but there are some colors which are heavier weighted than others. Looking at it, you're going to get more green pips in this deck. So 38% of the deck requires green mana, hence why there's a couple more forests that you kind of get in the deck. 16% of it is red, 18% is black, 16 is blue, and then 13% is white. When you are kind of building out your strategy and your plan, you kind of want to focus on having green mana in your opening hand. Let's dive into the C.R.I.S.Y score. Let's see how the deck scored based on our metrics. For consistency, it scores a 6.75. While it does feature excellent card draw engines like High Score, Harmonize, and then Wraithfillet, Wave Warrior, and April live on the scene, it lacks premium, unrestricted tutors to consistently find combos and synergy pieces, relying instead on raw card draw and natural redundancy to assemble its board. For resilience, the deck scores a 7 out of 10. The deck relies on board combat threats and fair recursion rather than infinite combos, of which it runs 0. It features strong individual recovery tools like Continue and Together Forever, but it lacks board level protection spells to shield its token and counter heavy board from repeated board wipes, capping its ability to easily rebuild. From an interaction point of view, it scores 6 out of 10. While it runs a decent level of interaction cards like Assassin's Trophy, Swift Demise, Special Move, and Steelbane Hydra, it suffers because it's only 4 of the interaction cards operate at an instant speed, and the deck has 0 counter spells and free spells. This makes the interaction highly telegraphed and leaves it vulnerable to fast stack-based combo turns. From a speed point of view, it scores 4 out of 10. The deck scores a 4 because it's a classic mid-range combat deck and expects to win around turns 8 and 9. Typically, this involves developing mana and early token generation on turns 1 and 3, and casting your commander and value engines on turn 4, accumulating +1/+1 counters through turns 5 to 7, and finally closing out the game on turns 8 and 9, activating the commander's Wooburg ability to swing with a massive army. Typically, the deck's a little bit slower because it is a 5-color commander as well, so they tend to operate at a slightly slower pace as well. From a yield point of view, so we generated an extra £8.29 was the extra value that we generated from the deck, which scores us a C.R.I.S.Y score of 14.23. That's the brief rundown of the deck specs. You'll be seeing all of the stats on the screen. This deck is like I said, a very highly synergistic deck, has its flaws, kind of needs some adaptation in terms of the speed, but is a very fun, and you can get like an explosive turn when you're swinging out with your commander's ability. So where does it rank compared to the other 2026 commander decks that we've reviewed so far this year? It slots in directly in between the two Lorwyn Eclipse commander, so takes that second place mark at 14.23, which is pretty good. So you get some decent value out of it, which is what Blight's Curse was lacking, but had the strength, but has a bit more power than what the Dance of the Elements had, but that did have the value behind it. Diving into the game plan and strategy, so the commanders that we are focused on, there's an array of commanders that you can kind of have. So you can have Leonardo the Balanced and partner select with approximately 6 different cards, and then the other backup commander is Turtles in a Half Shell. For this deck review, I've chosen to stick with Leonardo the Balanced and then partnered it with April O'Neil live on the scene. Reason for this is April kind of generates those tokens early by just creatures landing on the battlefield, which then triggers Leonardo to then add +1/+1 counters. So they kind of synergize really well to get your artifact tokens out and then kind of buff your creatures at the same time. Let's dive into the Mulligan guide. So what you're kind of looking for in terms of your opening hand. So you want to keep a 3-land hand. That is very important for a 5-color commander deck. Ideally, you want to be focusing on getting a white, green, and a blue mana, because this enables you to cast both your commanders early, and then because of the high percentage of green pips in the deck, you kind of then be able to activate your other ramp pieces. Ideally, if you have a early ramp or color fixing card, so a Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, or a Chromatic Lantern in your opening hand, and then a low CMC token generator like Lita Little Orphan Amphibian. Things you want to avoid is flooding your hand with high CMC threats, things like Vigor, Leatherhead, Iron Gator, Acidic Slime. You don't kind of want to have too many of those in your opening hand, and then having no green mana or early ramp is very detrimental to your start of this deck, because you want to kind of start on the front foot to get this deck going. How to pilot the deck. So I've kind of divided this up into 3 sections. How you want your early game to start, your mid game, and then what your win condition is. The early game is to get your ramp out with your Arcane Signet or Sol Ring alongside your 3 lands. So turns 1 to 3 would typically look like you'd play your first land and then a Sol Ring if you have that to start. Then turn 2 you'd play your second land, ideally a blue mana, cast your partner. Basically you'd cast Ep3 O'Neil live on the scene from the command zone, and then use any remaining mana to cast any more ramp spells if you do have them, like your Arcane Signet. You would then turn 3 you'd play your white mana, so you've got all of your 3 colors, cast Lita to start then generating clues, foods, and other tokens. So clues will give you card advantage, foods will provide you life gain, and then mutagen tokens buff your creatures with +1/+1 counters. Then you hit into the mid game. This is where at the turn 4-5 mark you want to deploy out your commander. So you cast Leonardo the Balance to begin distributing +1/+1 counters to your creatures whenever a token enters the battlefield, amplifying this scaling with counter manipulators like Corpse Jack, Menace, C.R.I.S.Y Score, and Arcane Cabinet. Once you've stabilized your board and you've grown them enough, this is where you kind of want to go into your later game, and you want to start deploying your heavy hitting synergy pieces like Heroes in a Half Shell, Leatherhead Iron Gator, or Shredder Shadow Mask to draw cards, put massive counters on your board, and then pressure your opponent's life totals. And then when you kind of have your mana up, this is where you kind of alpha strike. You pay your Wooburg with Leonardo to give your board a massive stat boost, adding Trample, Lifelink, and double their damage with other cards like Raphael the Muscle to wipe out the table in a single combat phase. Now that we've learned how to pilot the deck, let's look at some upgrades. Let's start with what I would add into the deck. So first card that I would add is a card called Primal Vigor. This card helps accelerate the number of counters and tokens which are created, allowing you to push towards the final win con a bit quicker. Cost of this card is about £5.50. Second card I'll add is Mutagen Man Living Ooze. This is from the main set. This is a great addition to the deck. Mutagen Man helps reduce the activated abilities of your artifact tokens by 1, so it essentially makes your mutagens free, and it makes it easier to cast your foods and your clue tokens and makes them cost 1 less, so you kind of can be a bit more sparing with your mana. And then when he comes down, he creates any number of mutant tokens, and because he is a mutant himself, he then triggers a possibility to create another token, which then kind of cascades the effect a little bit more with Leonardo. He costs about £1.40. Third card I'd add is the Ooze. This is an artifact that helps recycle your dying creatures +1/+1 counters into mutant tokens to help buff other creatures in the future. This synergizes really well with Mutagen Man as well, because the mutant tokens are cheaper to activate. The Ooze also has the ability to create mutagen tokens by exiling cards from your graveyard. Once they go in the graveyard, you're not running much recursion in this deck. The Ooze costs about £4.50. This is another card from the main set. The next card I'd add is Flawless Maneuver. So I've added this card in to address the deck's critical vulnerability to symmetric board wipes. It provides a free board-wide indestructible protection when your commander is on the battlefield. That's a great card to kind of have, and it gives you a little bit more protection as you amass your army. This is the most expensive card here, but it costs about £15.91. And the final card that I'll add is Mutational Advantage. I've added this to provide an instant speed protection, so once again helps with the vulnerability of the deck, because it adds hexproof indestructible for your counter board. So because all your board will have +1/+1 counters because of your commander, it helps kind of protect them while also giving you the ability to proliferate and grow your army even more. So it's kind of like the double benefit there. This costs £7.10, which the total upgrade value here comes in at £34.45, which is under that £50 mark. As always, if you're going to add some cards, we have to cut some cards. The cuts that we are kind of adding to the deck. First one that's on the chopping block is Electric Seaweed. I've removed this because it's a non-synergistic defender. It doesn't really fit with the core theme of the deck. It's not a turtle, it's not a mutant, it's not a ninja, so it doesn't contribute to the deck's core token and counter theme or aggressive combat style. It's a little bit slow. Next card on the chopping block is Mole Module. I've removed this because it's a high mana cost and has high crew costs, combined with a non-synergistic mill and reanimation ability that doesn't really align with the deck, or it's the deck's primary win con. It's not there to, we're not there to do any kind of recursion pieces. Third card that I'm removing is Exploding Barrel. I've removed it because it's a little bit slow. It is a 3 mana rock which can grow over time, but by the time that you kind of grow this enough, it becomes
a little bit redundant. It does have that really unique ability where you can kind of blow something up, but you have to then sacrifice the exploding barrel, which you spent all this time kind of buffing up with its pressure tokens to then give you more mana, to then sack it to then blow one thing up because it deals 20 damage to one thing. So kind of not really great as a single target removal. The fourth card that I'm removing is Double Jump and Flying Kick. Removed it because it's low impact. It's a temporary combat trick that does not provide permanent value, protection, or any card advantage. And then the final card that I'm removing is Biogenic Ooze. Removed it to alleviate the deck's severe green mana pip. It's quite an expensive card, and because its tribal synergy is restricted to oozes rather than mutants, ninjas, and turtles, so it doesn't kind of align with the core theme of the deck.
Right, that's a wrap for this deck tech episode. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pre-con turtle power kind of hits really well from a thematic point and kind of brings in some really good elements from the TV series and the comic book series. It's a highly synergistic deck, and kind of when it hits really hard and plays. It's a really fun deck to play. Thank you for sticking with me. Thanks for kind of like staying along the journey. If there's any of the cards that you see on the screen today that you want to go and purchase and gather for yourself, please jump into the description and look at the marketplaces. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if there's a pre-con that you want me to review next. I think the next one on the agenda is Secrets of Strixhaven, so there's 5 of those deck tech episodes to follow after this one. Thank you for joining the pod, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.